Hi everyone, and welcome to tonight's movie hangout, where we will discuss the movie The Shawshank Redemption. Just before we start, I would like to remind you that you can ask questions during the live session, and for that you just have to access this event on the Google Plus and then follow the instructions on how to ask a question. And also, before we start, let me introduce you to our guests. We have tonight with us Ruben from Spain. Hi, Ruben.
Hello, Jonah.
And we have Mike from Canada. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Joanna. Hey, Ruben.
Good. And I'm Joanna.
Hi,
Mike. And I'm Joanna, and I'm from Portugal. So, for those who haven't watched this movie yet, The Shawshank Redemption is a movie from 1994. It's quite a classic, and the message it's quite timeless. And as you will see during the discussion, we're going to discuss some of the points of this hangout. But the story is about Andy Dufresne, a successful banker that is sentenced to life imprisonment for the death of his wife and her lover. And during his time in prison, he faces the hardcore reality of being behind bars. And while at the same time, he manages to apply his skills in prison, and eventually he creates his own escape route to freedom. Right, so guys, while we are talking, if you can mute your phones, your microphones, that would be great, so that there's no feedback and everyone can hear loud and clear. Let's now start and look at one of the main messages of this movie, which is persistence and patience as a key to dig oneself out of the imprisonment of mind and of the system as a whole. So, would you like to give me your perspective on this, concerning your own process of digging out of your own mind? Mike, would you like to go ahead first? Don't forget you're muted.
Okay. Can you hear me now? Okay, perfect. Yeah, okay, so patience and persistence. There's definitely a direct correlation between the two, kind of working interconnectedly, you could say. Well, I'll say. Because what I found is that if I'm not patient within my own self-investigation, within going through my own mind, I'll become frustrated, irritated, and go into some sort of emotional reaction, which will then trigger me becoming, my own worst mental patient to a certain extent. Because I'm not patient, I become my own patient, so to speak. As a result, going into my own conflict, friction, and thus it exacerbates. And at the same time, the more we dig into our mind and investigate the depths of ourselves, it's necessary that we persist and keep going. And so kind of what I found is as we go through that process, our patience as a whole, like our level of patience expands, and it kind of coincides with our self-movement into the depths of ourselves.
Cool. It's a cool relationship, and we can definitely see the result of it in the movie and how that worked as the main keys for him to be able to get out of that prison, that we can also relate in our own process as facing our minds. Ruben, would you like to give us your perspective on that?
Yes. There are many aspects on this, like, for example, going back when I have fallen in behaviors that I don't like or that are not useful for myself. Like also being patient for when I make mistakes, because many times I have make mistakes with not using my time effectively or in other ways, for example, in my studies, and then I have to walk the consequence, which is, for example, another year of repeating doing the same course, and that is easier to give up, but it requires patience to continue. So it's that of continue to giving oneself the opportunity, even though one has made mistakes in the past.
Yes, Ruben, and you actually brought a very cool point, which takes us to our next discussion point here in the live hangout, which is the giving up pattern and how we can face that so often in our lives, and how this movie assisted us to walk through that by placing ourselves in the shoes of Andy. So guys, let me ask you, in terms of you applying your own patience when you face a problem, what is that? What is like the main point that kind of you go first before you apply patience? What is that process like in terms of the main pattern that you may have in terms of giving up? How do you walk that process? Mike, if you can go ahead, and Ruben, if you can mute your microphone, that would be great. Mike, I cannot hear you now. There you go. I think, Mike, try again now.
I was saying, Joanna, you cut out on my end for a moment there. So you're asking me how I walk through the patient's process? Is that
mainly on the point of giving up. So you know when you're facing a point. Let's
right.
Look at a point when you are in the middle of the storm, like it happened in the movie, and sometimes, at least in my perspective, I see that the giving up pattern comes up. But if you don't apply certain tools such as patience and your own self-direction, you can easily go through that. So you kind of have a decision that you can make. So how do you usually walk that?
Okay. Well, fortunately or unfortunately for myself, I learned this lesson the hard way to a certain extent, where as a result of my own consequence, having seen where, you know, I was faced with the point of direction, and basically I abdicated my direction within it because I allowed the emotion to get the best of me, and so then that became a memory for me in my future guidance in walking a point where seeing that, you know, if I don't stand as the directive principle in my movement and not allow my emotion that comes up or feeling that comes up to influence my ability to move through a point that I'm faced with resistance about, then, you know, I'm quite capable and able to just move myself effectively. And it really comes down to that knowingness within ourselves that, you know, we're here and we can in fact move ourselves beyond the limitation of what just pops up in our head.
That's super cool. I can relate to that, and how easy one can go to emotions. And like, I think we can actually go and see, and Ruben, I'd like to have your perspective on that. So when you're facing a point, especially a new point, like it happened with Andy, he went to prison and he didn't have any example in the prison to follow or to learn from, so he had to start from zero in establishing his own direction and set an example for himself. How do you do that in your own life, and what is the main challenge you have been facing in this regard?
It's cool in the movie seeing how he first managed to build himself something for himself in the prison, but then it all, in a way, can end when there's you know, the young man that knows the man who did it, the man who killed the couple. The mayor killed him, and then he says that it all stops, and this corrupt director of the prison says no, nothing stops now. So here he has the option of giving up or not. And then for me, it has been in the situations of seeing that, well, I'm here, maybe I'm a bit of in a situation I would not like to be, but then seeing how or what it is that is best that I do now, and then take that direction. And then in the movie, it's seen how from that point on he managed to, in the end, get the result that he wants, that is getting out of prison. Because if he had given up then, he would have not.
Yes, exactly. So especially when things get tough, we have to learn how to first know ourselves, understand how our mind works. And if you have a thought pattern of giving up, because based on previous examples, it's uh, not accepting and allowing that anymore, because you know you're here, you are your own solution. So if even if you haven't applied the solution before, the time is now to do it. Um, Mike, now looking at the point of applying one's direction, um, would you like, or do you have any perspective on that? By placing yourself also in that situation where it's all new to you, or now that you're walking your process, it's also a new stage in your life because you're like facing your memories, you're facing your emotions, you're facing the people in your reality. So how is it in assisting you to focus in one point? And this point that I'm thinking of is mainly the point of self-honesty, of knowing where you stand.
Okay, yeah, so I see this as a really cool process all around because, you know, to get to this point, you've garnered like a sense of understanding of yourself and what's going on, and like you say, the self-honesty point here is where now you're faced with what comes up, what comes out, or what you're presented with, and so it simply becomes, well, playing with things like see what works, what doesn't work, where we're really learning to develop ourselves in our expression and seeing how best to communicate with others, best to share with others, how best to give our attention and time to what is here, and it really becomes kind of fun because in essence, we're really learning to play with what is here in the best possible ways.
That's cool, and that was yeah. That's I can see that playing out, and sometimes even when we test something and it doesn't work, like in the movie, he tested a few things and it didn't work as he had planned, like the library that in the end is kind of destroyed, etc. And it's like, okay, that just didn't work. That doesn't mean I failed. It's simply I have to keep on working on myself and the reality around me. And for example, Ruben, one point that I noticed in this movie is actually a good mirror of what happens when you are stable within and how you apply that in your external reality. Did you see that in your own process of, for example, you see that there's a point of view if you are stable within you. Like for example, Andy, he knew that he didn't commit the crime, so he had this strength within him because he realized that this is not the place for me. I didn't commit this crime. However, what am I going to do to go around it? Did you find that in your
Yes.
reality as a mirror of yourself and how you can transform a reality to present as what you are within you?
Yes. There's in the movie there are shown two ways one can go about in this situation. The way that the main character goes, which is the simply others don't know that he is innocent, so he doesn't have anything more to work but what is at his disposal, but it's himself and his skills. And the other way is the fat guy that starts screaming in the middle of the night, that gets beaten up and killed at the beginning. They call them fish. So this guy says, I don't belong here. Let me out. I want my mommy. So that's the way of not taking responsibility for his situation, because even though he might not have done the crime, the situation is what it is. So the best way to go about is to simply do what one can, and I mean, what else can one do? As is shown in the movie, if you simply raise your arms and scream, it will not work out. It's the main character does something practical, and he gets what his objectives, what he planned, because it was very thoughtful planning.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of applying one's skills, no matter where you are or with whom you are, there's I found that a very good example indeed, and you just mentioned that in terms of not putting our arms down and saying, no, this is not the place for me, and actually going into denial, but rather saying, okay, this is where I am now, this is the reality, what can be done? How can I work with my reality into what is best for me, but at the same time best for all, which was very cool because he was able to bring dignity to the other inmates in the prison. So it was such a clever way of seeing, okay, what can I do for myself and for others? And in the end, he actually helped one of the guys that stood with him during those hard years. And we're talking about almost 20 years. So in terms of now looking at the point of patience, sometimes it's amazing how our mind works, and we see in our own process, it's like we see a point within us that requires change, and then we want it to change immediately, like in the next day. We want things to move, but then when it takes a little bit longer, we go into kind of self disappointment because we think we're not changing, things are not moving, while at the same time, we've had so much time to build our own selves like we are now that it's going to take time to change. So, Mike, would you like to give a perspective, not so much regarding the movie itself, but in your own process of changing yourself, how it's taking time and persistence? Don't forget to mute it.
Yeah. Okay. So, like for instance, what I found within investigating a point within myself, in looking into a reaction that comes up within myself, I've found that often, I see a point, so then I get it, and I'm like, okay, I get this, and then then the next point comes up that's related to that point, and so then there's more and more dimensions to the point in question. And that's really what's been the unfolding of process here for me, is that you can't figure everything out all at once. It's really the 1 + 1 + 1 equation where keep it simple, practical, specific, and just kind of moving along with points of specificity.
Yeah, that's a very good example in terms of going step by step. And when you have those haha moments, it's like not just staying in that moment, but actually go ahead. Like, for example, it was cool that in the movie, at some point when I was watching it, I thought that it was it. He was building the library, and he's gonna have the life of the other guy that was there for 50 years, and then he left, and then he killed himself because he couldn't. He was already limited in his own mind. That was the only thing he could do, was to live in prison. So then when Andy kept on doing and working on himself, I found quite a good example, and also how our own self-imposed limitations are the worst things and our worst enemies that we can be to ourselves. Ruben, can you also see this point within you,
Yes.
as you can limit yourself by defining yourself as something?
Yeah, and I have first an example I want to mention about the movie. The second one, Red, the Morgan Freeman, he has not such skills as Andy, but nevertheless he applies himself and he has his little business going on, and which is actually through this business that he gets Andy and himself and some other friends to the roofing, where Andy gets the opportunity to be able to do the IRS forms for the guards, which is the way in which Andy accesses all other privileges like livery and all that comes afterwards. So really, it's not much about being ready, but of doing with one half. So in my case, I didn't really know if I could prepare myself for university, but last year I was able to make it. So yeah.
That's a cool example of going beyond oneself self-imposed limitations. And one of that limitation is, as Mike was saying, was the like how overwhelmed emotions can be. And if one doesn't slow down and look objectively and specifically to that point and walk it step by step, we can easily go into giving up and thinking there's nothing else beyond that. So just before we continue, I would like to remind everyone that you can ask your questions or send your comments or any doubts you may have related to your process, or any question that you can have, and we will assist you with. So this is actually live, so we will be able to see your questions in real time and address them as well. So guys, in this movie, another big point that we can analyze and see and then bring it to our own selves is the hope that it's mentioned in this movie. And one of the parts in the movie is when Andy puts music, like he actually sabotages the speakers in the prison, and he places classical music, he plays it. And he says that it's something that he was able to bring to people that exists in each one of us, and that no one can take it from us. And what he was referring was hope. However, how I see it is, because Andy was not like mentioning the hope that in today's society we face, which is the magical hope, where we think that something is going to happen just because we hope that to happen without doing anything about it. It's actually a practical hope, because otherwise it can be a dangerous thing where we hang on to this idea of how we want things to be, but then we don't do anything about it. We don't work ourselves to actually build any change that we wish to happen inside of us and in the world. So now if you bring that to yourself, how do you see that hope or how have you kind of redefined hope in your own lives, so that you can make something out of it, of our self-will, for example? Mike, do you want to go ahead with this one?
Yeah, okay, sure. So, in even looking at the movie there, I felt like the hope, there was so much more to the hope, like you were saying, and it was more, I felt like the message was being instilled that it was more about the sound of our beingness here, like that we are the sound, we make the sound, and so thus Andy could always see, you know, the potential, that there was more possible than the situation he was within. So he wasn't, you know, bound or defined by the present limits that currently define the nature of his situation. And so, you know, that which was deemed to be like red as impossible was totally possible to Andy, because he wasn't operating within the same restraints. So I see that very much the same with ourselves here, is that you know, realizing our potential is just enabling ourselves to step out of the bounds of our own self-defined limitation. And I found that really starts with questioning, you know, what it is we define as impossible or not possible, and look at what we see as problematic, and basically step out and see that, well, if we have a problem, then we're one and equal also with a solution to that problem. And so by understanding one, we can understand the other just as easily.
Very cool. Very nice points there. And if we had more time, I would go through each one of them to explore them in more detail. And I'm sure that our audience also sees that these points are essential in our process. And Ruben, would you like to add anything to this in terms of how you've been able to redefine in your process this hope of actually going beyond that which you have imposed as impossible, but it is possible. It just takes a little bit more time and dedication, for example.
Yes, the problem is that for me, for example, I could not see in the future the things that I was able to achieve. So I didn't see it. So for me, it wasn't as if it was possible. But instead of like in the movie it says hope, I would say more like believe in oneself. And even though one might not see what is possible through simply doing it, it's the only way that things can move, and one can, for example, I am doing things that I didn't expect I was able or I would be doing in the future. So that is my experience. I didn't see it back then.
That's very cool, and of course you were not able to see it, and I see that in my life as well, was because we're not even giving us that opportunity of actually seeing, okay, if I want to have to go this way, what do I need to do it? What people do I need to connect to, or what is that I need to study? What do I need to learn for myself? And then we discovered that we already have that will. So now we're going to have the tools, and we build that. And it's funny that even while we're walking the process, sometimes there's moments where we seem to forget. And we think that we went to zero, and now all the emotions are here. And we have to kind of keep on reminding ourselves that we are walking it. And it doesn't mean that we're starting from zero, because we are already creating this change in ourselves. It's just another step to take, and then we'll bear the fruits as we walk. So it's not as something, there's like an objective out there that we're going to reach. Even the freedom in the movie, it's not actually the moment where he leaves out of the prison. It's the whole process that he was able to prove to himself that he was able to go through that, like stone by stone, where he was actually caving out of that wall to get it out. And it's such a nice analogy of how he actually did it, and going through that. It's the toughest one, because sometimes we want the quick fix solutions which don't exist. Mike, do you have, so you were saying earlier on that you were facing your own consequences. Did you learn the hard way? Why did you define it as the hard way? Do you think there's an easy way to walk it? Wait a second, you're muted now.
Yeah, exactly. Where basically I've come to see resistance as my life roadmap. So where I have resistance towards doing a particular thing or moving in a particular direction, that is my point of self-expansion and really, life development. Whereas initially, in basically resisting, when just following the resistance when it would come up, basically that created, unfortunate consequence for myself, because in seeing the aftermath of following the play out of just kind of going along with the thought train, or the emotional, energy possession that came up, whether it be a fear or whatever, whatever within the spectrum of it, that I held myself back from my potential to
Oh, Mike, your connection. Wait a second, we're missing you a little bit, Mike.
myself, share myself in a particular
Mike, we're missing. Wait a second, Mike.
moment that would
We're
lead
missing you a bit
to the
at
benefit
the
of
moment.
myself
Mike, wait a second.
and to the benefit of others.
I don't know what happened, but I couldn't hear your answer very well. Ruben, were you able to hear him clearly, or not?
No, it stopped for a good 20 seconds at least.
Okay, so Ruben, see if you can fix your internet connection while we continue, just so the experience to our users, it's not with those, since that your internet is kind of stuck. So see if you can fix that, and in the meantime we will continue with another point. I think you might need to log out and log in again. So while he was Ruben, let's just have a look at still on the point of going beyond the self-imposed limitations. It was surprising, and as I was saying earlier, one of the inmates, he actually he was in the prison for many years, like for probably 20 or 40, I don't remember. And when he went back to the system, he wasn't able to kind of, there was no rehabilitation, and he actually killed himself. So have you faced this pattern within you whereby you get addicted to your own self-limitations and your own beliefs and fears, and you're not, you see that you're stuck into this comfort zone? How do you face that nowadays? And Mike, wait a second, Ruben. Mike, we had to keep on going just because your internet seemed to be a bit stuck. But Ruben will pick up your answer shortly, yeah? If you can mute your phone as well, that would be good. Okay, go ahead, Ruben.
Okay, in the movie they say get busy living or get busy dying. And for me, yeah, there's and going back to the previous question that Michael was speaking about, there is a harder way and there is a easy way, meaning that it's not necessary to make it difficult for oneself. And usually for me, it's been, for example, that there exists some point where one cannot let go. So it's about investigating if things are not working out. It's not because one is not good or something like that, but there's a reason, and simply investigate it and find out to move on.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Ruben. And I guess that we have Mike with us again. So Mike, we couldn't hear you earlier on when you were expanding on your own individual process. Would you like to continue your answer, or can you hear me now? Mike? Mike, you're muted. I don't know if you can hear me. Okay, you're now okay. Maybe if you, Mike, we are not able to hear you, so we're having just a
Hello?
Okay, Mike, you're there. Good. Maybe not. Right. So, Ruben, let's just give a bit more, a few more seconds to Mike to be fully back here with us. And as you were saying, in terms of you not judging oneself as not good enough, for example, but to actually realize, okay, what do I need to do to improve my skills or to change myself in this specific context? And here, you can also bring this back to the world system, for instance, where we see that for us to understand the world, sometimes things can get a bit overwhelmed because you simply don't have the knowledge to understand it. And how have you been dealing this and applying yourself, for example, to understand the world and the world system, and actually applying the time and patience to do it? What has been your own process of understanding how the world works, for example?
Through documentaries is a good way of getting to know any topic, and especially about the world. There are many interesting. There is actually a Facebook group that maybe there can be in the description added for if anyone is interested. That the phrase is documentary a day kicks the ignorance away, or something like that. So definitely that is one good way. And then reading the news, also to see the manipulation that's going on, and to be informed and see what's happening, because one can switch off and not look out at what's happening, and really there's much going on that one would not be so willing to be in the position of many people in this world.
Yeah, that's a very good advice for those watching us. And it's interesting that actually in the movie the element that Andy worked on was actually building a library and the importance of education for people to understand it. And one of the books that they were talking about was the Count of Monte Cristo, that also they could relate to it and would provide them a good or a new starting point for them to realize what they can do with their time in a productive way. I think now we have Mike back with us. Mike, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, it's good to have you back. And we're now 5 minutes left, but I wanted to, because we couldn't hear your last answer, where you were actually looking at your own process and bringing this point of your individual process of walking your mind, and how you were actually talking about learning. For example, when you have a resistance, you realize, okay, that's the point that I must walk in order to go beyond my self-imposed limitations. Would you like to finish your answer? Anything that you want to add in this hangout?
Yeah, okay. So in facing a point of resistance, essentially I was saying I see that as my life roadmap, so to speak. Like, that's the key to me really living my life here. So my mind works in a pretty cool way in that when I'm participating within anything and I see a point of resistance or hesitance come up within my mind, that's indicating to me that, here is my, next point to walk through, transcend, if you will. So, in my everyday participation, having that approach gives you a good platform for moving yourself effectively within whatever you participate, because your mind.
Yeah, Mike, I think we're losing you again. So if you can try to fix that again. I don't know why, but then your answer cuts off. But I can understand exactly what you mean in terms of actually being effective with the time that one has and using your mind as a platform to learn from. And there's many ICWA interviews. Actually, I'm going to add the link on the description, because there's a live review that assisted me very much in terms of understanding how you can use your mind as your book, kind of, to understand how you work and how to deal with it. And then this person, the live review, he was actually seeing how his own passion became of wanting to know himself and to know how to deal with oneself as a key to solve his own problems and to realize himself. So I will add that onto the description. We haven't received any questions yet from the viewers. So just before we leave, we still have 2 minutes left. So Ruben or Mike, is there anything from this movie, apart from what we have discussed already, which it has been very supportive in terms of the points of persistence and self-education and transcending one's self-imposed limitations? Is there any other point that you would like to bring onto the Hangout tonight?
For me, yes, I have one. It's cool how at the end, even though the two main characters had different skills levels, they all finished in the same position. And they had different skill levels, but the two of them were equally directive and focused, and in a way believing in themselves and doing the best they could. For example, when Andy was working with the IRS papers, Red helped him. So he moved up from only dealing with this business of selling stuff and to also help his friend. And then at the end, he, even though he did not start off so well as Andy, he gets to live with him in a much, much better position. So it's cool seeing how together we can create something very cool for all of us living here on Earth.
Cool. Yeah, indeed. And it's actually not about comparing one's process to one another, because all our lives are different in terms of the skills we have, our path, our experiences. But in the end of the day, it is our direction of where we want to go. And in the end, we all want to walk ourselves and to actually realize our utmost potential. So it's how we can also support each other by standing as our own example, which was what Andy did. And then, you know, his inmates also learned from him, and they were actually applying themselves, his skills as well, in a way that they haven't done before. So those that people that are watching, each one of us can set our own examples wherever we are, no matter with whom we are, as long as we know where we stand and we do it for ourselves and then for others, obviously.
And it's interesting how Red was already living the example, because he was doing his best in the position that he was in.
Yeah, that's
For sure.
He was a leader to Andy as well. He was a leader to Andy.
Cool. Mike, would you
Definitely.
like to add anything to that? I'm just going to turn on my lights, but go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So I would say the point of potential exists within all of us. You know, maybe we have different potentials, so to speak, but that inherently within ourselves, you know, we all exist here as potential opportunity, and that wherever we find ourselves, you know, there always is opportunity and potential. And I see that ultimately as us in our self-expression to really make the best of whatever it is we're participating within, wherever we are.
Cool. Thanks for that. Guys, I really appreciate your participation here. We don't have any further questions and we don't have more time tonight. But this was a very supportive hangout. And one of the last comments I would bring tonight is, when things get tough and we are in the middle of the chaos, that's where we can apply ourselves the most. Obviously, we should apply ourselves in every moment, but when things get tough, our mind can get really busy with thoughts and emotions, and that's when we must direct ourselves to make sure that we don't go into those emotions, we don't get overwhelmed by it, but we actually direct ourselves and bring us into this physical reality and direct from there, using what is here and becoming our own living solutions. And this is what we do in our Desteni I Process. We're going to place links in the description box. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, or comments, please feel free to do that on the comments of this Hangout. And also, we're going to place links in the description as well, where you can find more information about what we're doing. So thank you, guys. It was great to talk to you. And I'll see you in 2 weeks with new guests and a new movie to discuss. Bye, everyone. Thank you very much. Bye.
See you guys.
Bye.